My heart beats fast, but I must not let my face betray my emotions, lest it shall detract from the dignity of a white man appearing under such extraordinary circumstances. So I did that which I thought was most dignified. I pushed back the crowds and, passing from the rear, walked down a long avenue of people until I came in front of the semicircle of Arabs, before which stood the white man with the gray beard. As I advanced slowly towards him, I noticed he was pale, that he looked wearied and wan, that he had gray whiskers and mustache, that he wore a bluish cloth cap with faded gold band, and that he had on a red-sleeved waistcoat and a pair of gray tweed trousers. I would have run to him, only I was a coward in the presence of such a mob, would have embraced him, but that I did not know how he would receive me. So I did what moral cowardice and false pride suggested was the best thing, walked deliberately to him, took off my hat, and said, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume." Before we speak about how Stanley met with Livingstone, let me give a very less than adequate summary of Livingstone's travels between 1858 and 1872. I had hoped to look at this more in depth, but it's quite extensive. There's a lot of details, so we're just going to summarize it for the sake of this series at this time. So in these years, Livingstone undertook some of the most ambitious and influential expeditions into Central and East Africa, driven by his unique blend of religious mission, scientific curiosity, and anti-slavery conviction. His second major journey, the British government-funded Zambezi expedition between 1858 and 1864, aimed to explore the Zambezi River as a potential route for trade, Christian missions, and anti-slavery economic development. Though it was hampered by navigational challenges, particularly the impassable Cahora-Bassa Rapids, and marred by interpersonal conflicts and logistical failures, it led to the significant discovery of Lake Malawi in 1859 and provided valuable scientific and geographical data. When he returned to Britain in 1864, Livingstone faced criticism over the expedition's high cost and limited success, but he defended his work through lectures and publications, notably A Narrative of an Expedition to the Zambezi and its Tributaries, 1865. Undeterred, he launched a final expedition in 1866 with private backing, this time to locate the source of the Nile and investigate the growing East African slave trade. Over the next 7 years, he journeyed through some of the most remote and dangerous parts of the African interior. He meticulously documented geography, natural history, and the brutal realities of the slave trade, most famously witnessing a massacre in 1871 where Arab slavers killed over 400 villagers. But now, let's learn how and why Henry Morton Stanley uttered those memorable words, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume." So, the lack of authentic news respecting Livingstone touched the hearts of the British people keenly. The question was often asked, why does he not write? We know now that his letters were either lost or deliberately intercepted and destroyed by the Arabs, who were frightened at the thought that the British people should know what Livingstone himself had witnessed. The long silence of the 3 years had led many to believe that he was dead. Demands were made that an expedition should be organized to ascertain if he was yet alive or had suffered death in his heroic attempts to explore Central Africa. But while England was demanding and debating, an American journalist acted. Mr. Bennett of the New York Herald felt that the finding of Livingstone would be a journalistic scoop of the first magnitude. He had watched with interest the career of a young Welshman named Henry Morton Stanley, who had immigrated to and become a citizen of the United States. Believing that Stanley would be just the right man to carry out his idea successfully, Mr. Bennett wired him to come to Paris where he was staying. The interview took place in Mr. Bennett's bedroom at the Grand Hotel. The result was that, after fulfilling certain other details that were specified, Stanley was commissioned to search for Livingstone in earnest, not for an interview, but to discover, and if necessary, extract him, wherever he might be in the heart of Africa. Stanley arrived in Zanzibar on December 31st, 1870, and on the 21st of March, 1871, his expedition was ready to move. In his autobiography, Stanley tells us that it took a compact little force of 3 whites, 31 armed freedmen of Zanzibar as escorts, 153 porters, and 27 pack animals to begin the journey. Equipped with every needful article for a long journey that the experience of many Arabs had suggested, that my own ideas of necessaries for comfort or convenience in illness or health had provided. Its very long composition betrayed its character. There was nothing aggressive in it. Its many bales of cloth and loads of beads and wire, with its assorted packages of provisions and medicine, indicated a peaceful caravan about to penetrate among African tribes accustomed to barter. While its few guns showed a sufficient defensive power against bands of native bandita, offensive measures were utterly out of the question. Stanley, after reaching Anyan Mbe, got caught in a conflict between Arab settlers and Chief Mirambo. He unwisely sided with the Arabs and was forced into a failed retreat. Realizing his mistake too late, he had to take a long, indirect route around Mirambo's territory, which delayed him by nearly a month before he could finally continue his journey toward Ujiji. Friday, November 10th was the eventful day when Livingstone and Stanley met. The story of this meeting has often been told. When the caravan was about half a mile from Ujiji, Stanley's men fired their guns as a salute. Among the dwellers in this Arab colony, consternation prevailed. For the moment, they thought it was Mirambo attacking them. As the people poured forth fully armed, they saw, borne aloft at the head of the caravan, the American flag. This was sufficient to show them that it was a white man's caravan, and with great enthusiasm they escorted the members of the expedition into the town. Stanley says, "I was about to ask one of the nearest to me whether it was true that there is a white man in Ujiji who has just come from the countries west of the lakes, when a tall black man in a long white shirt burst impulsively through the crowd on the right and bending low said, 'Good morning, sir,' in clear, intelligent English. 'Hello,' I said. 'Who are you?' 'I am Susie, sir, the servant of Dr. Livingstone.' 'What? Is Dr. Livingstone here in this town?' 'Yes, sir.' 'But are you sure that it is Dr. Livingstone?' 'Why, I leave him just now, sir.' Before I could express my wonder, a similarly dressed man elbowed his way briskly to me and said, 'Good morning, sir.' 'Are you also a servant of Dr. Livingstone?' I asked. 'Yes, sir. And what is your name?' 'It is Chuma.' 'Oh, the friend of Wikotani.' 'Yes, sir.' 'Well, now that we have met, one of you had better run ahead and tell the doctor of my coming.' The same idea striking Susu's mind, he undertook in his impulsive manner to inform the doctor, and I saw him racing headlong with his white dress streaming behind him like a wind-whipped pennant. As Stanley entered the market-place, he saw the figure of an elderly white man, clad in a red flannel blouse, grey trousers, and a blue cloth gold-banded cap. Bowing, he said, 'Dr. Livingstone, I presume.' Smiling cordially, he lifted his hat and answered briefly, 'Yes.' This ending all speculation on my part, my face betrayed the earnestness of my satisfaction as I extended my hand and added, 'I thank God, doctor, that I've been permitted to see you.' In the warm grasp he gave my hand and the heartiness of his voice, I felt that he was also sincere and earnest as he replied, 'I feel most thankful that I'm here to welcome you.' To Livingstone, the coming of Stanley was as the breath of a new life. It relieved his anxieties and enabled him to take that nourishment his wasted body craved, and above all, it brought to him messages from the children he loved, and news of the busy world outside. In his journal he says, 'The news made my whole frame thrill. The terrible fate that had befallen France, the telegraphic cables successfully laid in the Atlantic, the election of General Grant, and the death of good Lord Clarendon. Appetite returned, and instead of the sparse, tasteless 2 meals a day, I ate 4 times daily, and in a week began to feel strong. I am not of a demonstrative turn, as cold, indeed, as we islanders are usually reputed to be, but this disinterested kindness of Mr. Bennet, so nobly carried into effect by Mr. Stanley, was simply overwhelming. Really do feel extremely grateful, and at the same time I am a little ashamed at not being more worthy of the generosity." The 4 months which Stanley spent with Livingstone formed a period of close friendship and happy fellowship. Together they explored the north end of Lake Tanganyika and conclusively proved that it had no connection with Lake Albert. When Stanley was stricken with fever, Livingstone nursed him back to health and strength. So the 4 months, full of happiness for Livingstone, passed away. From Ujiji they journeyed together to Yanyabi, where they had agreed that Livingstone should wait for the escort which Stanley had promised to send him from Zanzibar. Every appeal which Stanley made to him to return to England was firmly rejected. He felt that his work was not completed, and with such a man, this counted far more than life itself. Realizing the hopelessness of trying to persuade him to return to his native land, Stanley promised to provide him with a reliable escort to accompany him on his next great journey, in which he hoped to set the matter of the Nile's sources at rest. And so, after months of perilous travel, hardship, and uncertainty, Stanley found the man the world had nearly given up for dead. This meeting marked not just a historic moment in the age of exploration, but a deep personal connection between two determined souls who had braved the heart of Africa in search of purpose and truth. Livingstone's legacy would live on not only in maps and journals, but in the words Stanley made famous, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume." If you've enjoyed this journey and want to hear more incredible true stories of God's peculiar people, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story. In the next episode, we'll follow the final fateful journey of Dr. David Livingstone.